Okay, well, as you know, I was born in a little house in Brookneal, Virginia. I'm told, because I can't remember that, but I've been back to visit the house since. A black family lives in there now. It's got siding on, which it didn't have when we were there. I'm told that at night when the boys laid in their beds, they could look out through the cracks in the building to see the outside. The first things I knew I said was after my sister was born, and I looked over in her crib and it said, "My darling baby daughter," because I heard my mother say that so many times. That's what I thought you were supposed to say to the little baby, you know. So, and she was a year and some months younger than I am, so we were both accidents, I think. My four brothers came along, you know, one right after the other, and we came along. I was 5 years younger than John, but like Toonie and her daughter, since Sis and I were little kids and they were big kids, we got drug around a lot by them. We learned a lot of bad habits from them as we watched them grow. But I think one of the first stories I heard about, we lived on a farm that had, I think, 70 acres, but it was a fairly good sized farm. In 1933, the year I was born, my father was a teacher and a principal at a 4-room school in Brookneal, and he had a salary of $800 a year, and that year the county went bankrupt, like a lot of places in the Depression. And my father got actually $200 that year as pay, and we had 5 children, and a year later 6 children to raise on $200 a year. My mother had a stipend coming in from her first husband, who was a veteran that died during World War I, and it only amounted to like $17 a month or something, but it helped a lot. In those days, though, you have to realize $17 was a lot more money than it is today. You could buy a lot more with it, and you didn't buy a lot because on that 70-acre farm we raised our own food pretty much, canned what we needed. We had to buy the jars and lids and so forth for canning, but we had a lot of that stuff was done for us. We had a pony named Billy and a dog named Stoutfella. That was my first dog, was Stoutfella, and I don't remember him, but he was very gentle with me, and he could be a real rascal with strangers that came in, but he protected all of us. And the horse Billy wouldn't let anybody ride on him except Al. And Al trained that pony. He had read in an Indian book somewhere that if you got on their back and you bit their ear until they stopped trying to get you off, that when they were done they would be submissive to you. And so he did that, and it worked, because he was the only guy that could ride that horse without getting bitten, except me. And they would put me on the saddle, and the horse was gentle. He wouldn't buck when I was on, and somebody was leading the horse, but he'd buck for Dave, Joe, and John whenever they tried to get on him, you know. But Al had control of that horse. And I think they used to plow the fields with Billy and all kind of stuff. It was kind of a Walton Walton's story, we lived in. We were kind of dirt poor people, and but my father had a good profession. It's just that things weren't working out for him right away. But then in 1936, my grandfather blew up in an accident. He had some kind of thing where he could go out and sell these electric generators that generated electricity for farmhouses with a bromide solution type of thing. And what he would do is sell them, and if he sold one, then he would build it by the plans, and he would hire workers locally to do the digging and things like that. Well, evidently somebody sparked this thing off prematurely. It blew up and killed him. I don't know if anybody else was killed. But so 1937, 36 rather, I was like 3 years old. We moved back to Westminster. I say back. I never lived in Westminster before, but my father grew up in Westminster, and he came back to take care of his mother, who then moved to her mother's house in Emmitsburg, which was a substantial farmhouse and had 30 acres on it. I was only 3 at the time, and we lived at 33 East Green Street, and the only thing I can remember about 33 East Green Street was we had a neighbor named Miss Craiglow, who was a very nice old lady, and she was about 90 years old. And later on, when we moved to Milton Avenue, like a year afterwards, she committed suicide. Unfortunately, she was a good friend of my mother's. That had an emotional toll on the family. I can remember a year. Now, my father, when he got work in Maryland, his teaching job was in Sykesville, which meant he had to drive from Westminster every day to Sykesville, or get a house in Sykesville, one or the other. So he bought a brand new Chevrolet to go back and forth, and before the month was out, it was stolen. It cost $1,000. In those days, a brand new Chevrolet cost $1,000. And he, but you didn't carry insurance either. And so he never got his car back, and he never got any insurance money, and he had to pay for it. And I'm not sure whether it was before or after that. He was, I think he was working at Sykesville, and he got appendicitis, and it got infected so bad he got peritonitis, which means the appendicitis bursts and inflames your whole abdomen. Those days they didn't have antibiotics or anything. He damn near died, and he ended up out of work the whole year just about. And so we had no income. That year, it might have been, I don't know, when I was 4 or 5, but whatever year that was, my brothers went through garbage cans scavenging for broken toys and things like that. They came back and painted them and repaired them and whatnot, and that's where our Christmas came from for Sis and I. Our older brothers got it out of garbage cans. And that wasn't too uncommon, because, you know, I was telling you, Jack Barsock's been a friend of mine. We were in kindergarten or nursery school or whatever it was, at the Methodist Church when we were 5. And I guess if that's true, Sis was there when she was 4 because she went with me. Somebody had to pay for that, you know. So we got a head start on school. And so life wasn't all bad, but we had a lot of bad turns in those days. Somewhere around before World War II, the 2 years before World War II, that would be 39 and 40, the summers, Pop ran the concession at the pool in Union Mills, and that was like any other public pool. People bought tickets to go in there, and some people had season tickets, you know, other people bought tickets for the day. We sold refreshments at the concession and stuff like that. Pop did that. Of course, we had to keep the pool clean and so forth. But the advantage Sis and I had was that we swam free every day, and we learned to swim there, so it was really nice. Now this was, in those days, was spring water coming into a pool and maybe putting some chemicals in it, but it was not a filtered water or anything like that, you know. And the overflow went in the creek and so forth. So that pool has since been covered over, and there's houses near it. It's no longer there, but it was there when I first moved back to Westminster years later. But 2 years Pop ran the concession stand. Then when World War II started, he worked in the summers at various defense plants to help the war and to add income to the family income. But somehow he was able to get an FHA loan to build a house on Milton Avenue. He bought the land, I don't know how he bought it, from a guy named Milt Sullivan who lived down the street. He was fairly wealthy as people went in those days. He was a realtor or something, and we got that land on the end of the street, and Pop had it built, I think, for $2,900. A lot of the work was done by masons and carpenters who let Pop's boys help, so that Al and Dave and Joe particularly, maybe even John, were out helping dig the foundation and helping mix the concrete for the cement blocks, and you know, and that sort of stuff. And I'm told the mason was so good, and he worked so fast that they had to prop up the basement walls with poles so they wouldn't fall over because they were so wet and top heavy. So they really laid that fast. Of course, he also built a brick chimney for the house, which went up through the central floors, and later I tore the chimney out and put ductwork up there for central heating and air conditioning. But when he had it, it was a chimney going up there.